Is Israel winning or losing the war in Gaza? After Hamas's October 7th massacre that killed over 1,200 Israelis, the goals of the war were clear.
Destroy Hamas, free the hostages, and ensure that Gaza doesn't pose a threat to Israel anytime in the future.
But a secret letter from a minister in Israel's war cabinet reveals additional goals and Israeli concerns over being able to achieve them. So here are 9 goals of the war, how Israel's doing on each, and if success is even possible. First, we'll look at the official goals of the war, and then we'll dive into that letter I mentioned. Number 1, dismantling Hamas's military. 4 months into the war, Hamas claims 6,000 fighters have been killed. Israel says the number is twice as high. But with an estimated 30,000 fighters before the war, the goal is less about killing all of Hamas's fighters, as much as it's about destroying their ability to operate as a coordinated fighting force. To that end, the IDF has destroyed a lot of Hamas's infrastructure, including hundreds of tunnels, and disbanded most of their 24 battalions. According to Israel, communication is now nearly impossible between Hamas's Gaza leadership, their leaders in exile, and the fighters in the field. On the other hand, senior Hamas leaders are still managing to stay one step ahead of Israeli forces. The bigger question is, can Hamas's military really be dismantled altogether? Certainly, Hamas's military can be kept from coming back as a large-scale, coordinated military force that operates in the open. But they will also almost certainly continue to exist as a terrorist group, working from the shadows and hiding among civilians. Hamas's goal is the complete destruction of Israel, and until that goal is achieved, there will always be some number of Palestinians trying to kill and willing to be killed for the cause. Number 2, dismantling Hamas's government. Obviously, with so much of Gaza under rubble and Hamas's leaders in hiding, they're not functioning as a government right now. According to Israel's defense minister, Hamas's exiled leadership is looking for a replacement for their leader in Gaza, indicating a potentially major disruption to their operations. Perhaps even more significant are recent protests in Gaza against Hamas. For nearly 20 years, Hamas has ruled Gaza with an iron fist, violently cracking down on any dissent. The fact that Gazans are beginning to publicly criticize Hamas is an indication that their control is slipping. But Hamas isn't down for the count. Reports indicate that the terrorist movement has begun trying to restore its control in parts of northern Gaza, just weeks after the IDF finished its main operations there. In response, the IDF has renewed operations in northern Gaza, but the question remains, can the goal ever really be achieved? I think the simple answer is yes. There's no such thing as a guerrilla government. As in the West Bank, it's certainly possible to have a Palestinian government that isn't called Hamas. But what that government might look like, we'll address a bit later. Next up, number 3, bringing the hostages home. On October 7th, over 250 people were kidnapped by Hamas and other groups and taken to Gaza. Since that moment, Israel has made bringing the hostages home one of the central goals of the war. But success here is not a binary. On the one hand, Israel secured the release of over 100 hostages in a ceasefire deal in November. 3 other hostages have been rescued by the IDF in special operations throughout the war as well. But there are still 134 men, women, and children being held hostage in Gaza. The failure to bring the rest of the hostages home has drawn sharp criticism from within Israel, although Israeli leaders insist that the terms Hamas is demanding are impossible to accept. As of now, there's been no breakthrough in stalled negotiations, though we can hope that's changed by the time you're watching this video. So, can this goal ever be accomplished? Unfortunately, bringing all of the hostages home alive is likely impossible, considering that since October 7th, some of the hostages have lost their lives, including 4 who died in failed rescue attempts. And Hamas has proven it is willing to hold hostages for a very long time, having already held 2 hostages since 2014 and 2015. But for those still alive, hope remains, and success to one extent or another remains possible. Number 4, restoring security to the Gaza periphery. The October 7th massacre shook Israelis' sense of security to its core. The success of the attack destroyed basic assumptions about Hamas, the effectiveness of the border fence, and the IDF's ability to respond quickly and strongly to a coordinated attack. In the days following October 7th, thousands of Israelis fled the area surrounding Gaza. 4 months later, the IDF has basically put an end to the daily rocket and mortar attacks on the communities. The IDF is reportedly creating a buffer zone along the Gaza border, and several inquiries into the security failures of October 7th will hopefully improve overall security. In fact, the IDF has already announced that many of those residents can return home. So, overall, I think we can count this one as a success, at least in the short term. But achieving this goal in the long term will depend on many of the war's other goals. Okay, so while those 4 goals represent the main goals of the war, there's still the issue of that secret letter, reportedly circulated among Israel's war cabinet, and penned by one of the cabinet's members. The letter mentions a few more goals and also, in a new twist, puts a deadline on achieving those goals. Number 5, restoring security in the north. Soon after the war began, Iran-backed terrorist group Hezbollah began launching daily rocket and missile attacks towards towns and cities in northern Israel, sparking a mass evacuation. Since then, fighting along the border has only intensified, and a full-blown war is not out of the question. Really, the fact that matters haven't already escalated into war shows how much both sides are hesitant to go all in. So, can security in the north ever be achieved? Most likely it can, but only to the extent that there was security there before October 7th. In the long term, Hezbollah will remain a potential threat. Israeli civilians will eventually return to their homes in the north, but their sense of security will remain tenuous at best. Number 6, transitioning to precision raids. A full-out war takes up a ton of resources and requires a huge call-up of reserves, damaging the economy and disrupting the lives of hundreds of thousands of Israelis. So Israeli leaders want to transition as soon as possible to an operation focused on pinpoint raids in order to lessen the impact on the economy and society. That transition is already underway to some extent, with the IDF sending many reservists home in mid-January for a few months of rest before likely returning to the front. How exactly the rest of the transition will be carried out is still a little foggy, although there are some signs of where things are headed. For one, the IDF has been working on a new road cutting Gaza in 2 that could give the military better freedom of movement in the Strip, even when most of the forces pull out. Another sign of the future is a recent pinpoint raid in Rafah by Israeli special forces to rescue 2 hostages. It's a sign that new Israeli intelligence is beginning to enable such operations. But Israel says it can only make a transition to pinpoint operations after Rafah has been conquered. So, while this goal will likely be achieved eventually, it's hard to tell how far off we are. Number 7, providing an alternative government for Gaza. Israel's prime minister has made clear that while the IDF will maintain security control in Gaza for the foreseeable future, Israel has no interest in governing there. Israeli officials have said that the Palestinian Authority, which governs the Palestinians in the West Bank, is not an option for Gaza. The PA is incredibly unpopular among Palestinians, and it's extremely corrupt, which is part of what led to Hamas taking over Gaza in the first place. And the PA also supports terrorism itself, including through a program known as Pay to Slay, that rewards terrorists with cash. Early reports say that the IDF is beginning to talk to local leaders on the ground in Gaza. But honestly, anyone who is seen collaborating with Israel is at best delegitimized among Palestinians, and at worst, putting a target on their back. Israel has said that a reformed Palestinian Authority could be an option, and the PA has even begun passing some reforms, though so far those reforms are really only cosmetic. So achieving this goal will be hard and take a long time. But a power vacuum can only last so long. For better or worse, nature will eventually take its course. Number 8, preventing an escalation of violence in the West Bank. See, Hamas isn't just in Gaza. It also has a massive following in Jerusalem and the West Bank. Since the beginning of the war, Israeli forces have conducted daily raids in towns and cities throughout the West Bank and East Jerusalem, arresting more than 3,000 suspected terrorists, including over 1,300 Hamas members. There's already been an uptick in violence in recent weeks, with several deadly terrorist attacks against Israeli civilians. But in comparison to past rounds of the conflict, the West Bank and East Jerusalem have been relatively under control. And while we may count this as a win for now, it may not stay this way when we get to number 9, Ramadan. While those 8 goals are tough, the kicker is the deadline. A ticking time bomb that is about to go off. The Muslim holy month of Ramadan. The month of Ramadan is always a tense period in Israel, usually marked by an uptick in terrorist attacks and violence in Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza. As the holy month gets closer and closer, Israeli leaders have expressed an urgency to accomplish as many of the war's goals as possible beforehand. And those are some pretty big goals, especially considering that Ramadan starts on March 10th. Israel has definitely made some major progress against Hamas in the past 4 months, but there's still a lot to be done, and not a lot of time to do it. So is Israel winning or losing the war? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.